Hi, this is Mark Harris, Pope Francis at the UN. Today he was at the UN at 8, well, he got to the UN after 8:30. He was supposed to be at the UN by 8:30, September 25th, 2015. And what he said in Congress seems to be more of a concern than what he said at the UN. But he's talked about respecting the rights of environmental limits. All right, I believe this is bogus. I believe that, environmentalism is important, but it should be individual choice. And I don't believe that we're destroying the earth, really, in entirety. And as I've said before, I read a book called System Sensitive Leadership. Let me get that. By Michael C. Armour and Don Browning. System Sensitive Leadership. It's supposed to be a religious book, but that's not why I'm reading it for. What I'm reading it for. It's called System Sensitive Leadership by Michael C. Armour and Don Browning. System Sensitive Leadership. And Michael C. Armour and Don Browning. Talks about different systems and just different thinking systems. And System 6 is a system of thinking where you want to connect with the environment, equal rights, and the environment is System 6. So that's what he's focusing on. System 6, the rights of people, equality, which I agree with. You should treat people as equals unless their lives give you some reason to treat them differently. He talked about System 8 thinking, which is the world is one, a one world. And we're moving into these systems that it talks about in this book. We're moving into the systems that it talks about in this book that I have read part of. I don't want to read the whole thing because it has to do with the religious stuff, and I'm not into their religion, into that form of Christianity. And System 8 is where you think of the world as one, and System 7 is about adaptability to changing complexities. And I think I am in System 6 and System 7. So I'm understanding where they're supposedly coming from with this stuff. And the world is moving into higher systems as time goes on because things are changing. You have to read the book. The systems are not based on religion. It's done by a professor. He talked about helping those in extreme poverty. He talked about the 2030 agenda, 2030 agenda for the year 2030, about education and the environment. He talked about lodging, labor, and land as being issues. Lodging, housing, labor, work, and land. Ownership. Territorial ownership. He talked about essential economic and spiritual goods, or essential economic and spiritual good or spiritual goods. He talked about avoiding war, which is a System 6 probably, and System 8 idea, which I agree with. We should avoid war. Goal of prohibition. He talked about the goal of prohibition of nuclear weapons. He talked about he said the real danger comes from man. I don't agree with where he's coming from there. He said it was a quote by Paul the Sixth. Paul the Sixth, I think he was a pope. The future demands critical and global decisions. Here again with this global thing. It's something on my touchpad here. He said set aside partisan issues for the common good. So are people not to stand up for what they believe is right because that's a partisan issue? I disagree with you, therefore we need to set aside these partisan issues, which is what he talked about in his speech to Congress. And somebody summed up what he said and said, a Catholic clergy summed up what he said and said, harm to the environment is harm to humanity. That was this morning. And I think it was 11:30 this morning, but it didn't quite get started until about 12 or after 12, the multi-religious ceremony at the 9/11 memorial. And I couldn't hear much of it because they stopped streaming it. They either had a technical problem, which I doubt, or they stopped streaming it for some reason. But they had a Muslim stand up with a Jewish man, with a Muslim with a Jew, and they were at the microphone, and they were talking about peace. And I don't think the Muslims' attitude of the Jews is one of peace. And I don't think that Islam teaches peace with the Jews or the Christians. Now, there may be exceptions where Muslims are friendly and nice to Jews and Christians, but the idea is that Jews and Christians are the enemy. And these religions are incompatible with Christianity, so it's interesting the Pope would bring that up. Would bring up these religions and go to a quote-unquote multi-religious ceremony where he spake. And religions united for peace. That was the idea that was coming out of what I saw, which was cut off for whatever reason. These people killed each other. You know, what is going on? I think we're having a different coalition device come up, and the idea is that Christians are not on the bandwagon. True Christians are not on the bandwagon.